So I'm very happy to see Dr. Vinod Deshmukh. He has joined the Yogic Neuroscience group recently, and he is authority on neuroscience. He has is a medical doctor, PhD, DSc, all this different honors that he has, and he has published many different articles and papers and written about 5, 6 books related to meditation and neuroscience and so on. So welcome, Dr. Deshmukh. And again, if you want to say a few more things, because I'm just giving a short introduction. And it is really, honor to have you on Sri Yoga and all your, deep knowledge about different aspects. And also, he's a wonderful photographer. If you have not seen his photography, please join the Sri Yoga photography group. Every day he posts about 20 photos, and these are amazing nature photos. All right, Dr. Deshmukh, if you want to start. And whenever you want me to put the slides on, let me know. I will put the slides on.
Yeah, go ahead and put the slides on.
Okay.
So I called it biofrequency spectrum because to make it broader, we all know about electromagnetic frequency spectrum. But I think modern research is showing that biofrequency spectrum is also coming into limelight. And mainly neurofrequency, like electroencephalography, EKG, and the respiration-related electrical changes. So any biosignal, and there is a whole wide spectrum of that, and we need to learn and appreciate, because we literally live in an ocean of biosignals. And each one of us is processing not only this live information we receive, but also we transmit. And we share that information. And our human experience depends on this live processing. Next. This may look like just a scribble, as if some child has scribbled lines on a piece of paper. But this pattern is extremely meaningful. And what it shows is a typical spike and wave complex 3 cycles per second discharge from the brain. This is an electrical activity of the brain, probably in a child between 5 to 9-year-old who is having an absence seizure or a petit mal seizure. And it lasts for about 7 seconds. And it has an abrupt onset and abrupt ending. And typically this happens when a child is standing and speaking or counting, and suddenly this seizure occurs and the child stops. He becomes totally unaware. He may have blinking of the eyes. He does not fall down, but he stops talking. He cannot process any information. He becomes totally unaware. And then after 7 seconds, he comes back to consciousness and starts from where he was. So this is an amazing bioelectric signal or neuroelectric signature of this seizure. And any trained neurologist or epileptologist, as soon as he sees this, he will tell you exactly what the child is experiencing. So there is a very close, tight correlation between what happens in the brain electrically, electromagnetically, and what's happening to our experience. Next. So this seizure, this is the normal EEG on the top. And then you can see on the left down side, there is a partial EEG where the focus of epilepsy is on one small area of the brain, usually the temporal lobe. And then the second example is the generalized seizures, which can be like tonic-clonic seizures. And the patient may fall and may have repetitive movements and has total loss of consciousness. Next. Now, this is another signature pattern in which there is a slow wave delta activity throughout the brain. And this means either the person is sleeping in deep sleep or the person has been anesthetized. So one can clearly say that this person doesn't have, is not an alert, he's not speaking, he's not interacting, he's either in deep sleep or is anesthetized. So there is a very close correlation between electrical activity of the brain and the human experience and our observations of it. Next. So there are many different kinds of frequencies. For example, the delta activity is like 0.3 to 4 hertz, and that is typically seen in dreamless sleep or access the subconscious and loss of bodily awareness. Theta activity is 4 to 8 hertz. Hertz means cycles per second. And it is seen in REM sleep or rapid eye movement sleep or dream sleep, inner peace, and deep meditation. Alpha activity is seen is 8 to 13 cycles per second and is seen in creativity, flow state, or focus, attentional focus. Beta activity is 13 to 30 hertz, is seen in concentration, arousal, alertness. And gamma activity is seen in multiprocessing, also binding between different networks within the brain itself, like binding between the left and right hemisphere, or binding between frontal lobe and the parietal lobe. So all this binding of different neural networks is usually accompanied by gamma activity. Next. We have what is called the reticular activating system in the brainstem, medulla, pons, and the midbrain. And that is like the powerhouse, is like the generator of electricity that then activates the brain, the cerebral cortex, the cerebellum, and also the spinal cord. So this network is pretty ancient, and this network is responsible for conscious arousal, sleep, pain, muscle tone, and then ascending fibers, sending signals. It arouses the cerebral cortex. Unless the reticular activating system activates the cerebral cortex cannot function. And of course, the cortex influences the reticular formation. It's both ways. And this reticular formation controls the overall degree of cortical alertness or level of consciousness. Next.
So, just one question. Do you want people to ask questions at the end?
Yeah, at the end would be better.
Okay. Just want to, and then again, if you can post if you have any comments, you can post it in the chat. Let's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, the reticular formation is like the central system or the very heart of the central nervous system. In fact, Wilder Penfield called it the centrancephalic system, where it is the midbrain and the lower thalamus. The reticular formation is connected to all the sensory pathways like the optic, auditory, olfactory, taste, spinal cord, thalamus, corpus striatum, cortex, and cerebellum. It also communicates with spinal cord, red nucleus, thalamus, cerebellum, and cortex. So it's almost like a central processing network which is extremely crucial. If this is damaged, then one goes into coma. One is not able to process anything consciously. Next.
I I pressed the. I don't know. It
Next.
didn't go through next.
Next slide.
It didn't go through next slide. Okay.
Oh, there. Yeah. Now, in pranayama and a lot of the yogic exercises, breathing is extremely important. And the breathing is not just through the nose, but it affects the whole brain all the way up to the reticular formation. It's a very primitive but extremely important uh, activity that we all have. Breathing is very powerful and pranayama is very powerful. It influences the brain continuously. Every time we breathe in and out, we are influencing the brain, the electrical activity of the brain. So it goes from the nasal activity, the cribriform plate, the olfactory bulb, and then to the brain. Next slide. Now, in this, you can see these are the olfactory bulbs, olfactory tract, and it goes to the hypothalamus, the olfactory cortex, hippocampus, and then the reticular formation. So it goes all the way to the brainstem. It's an amazing, every deep breath, exhalation and inhalation affects your brain electrophysiologically. So it's a very powerful tool. And the more voluntary control you have and the more skillful you are in breathing, the more you can keep an optimum state of the brain and mind. Next. So during EEG, we do different activating procedures. For example, hyperventilation. We ask the person or patient who is suspected of epilepsy or seizures to breathe for about 3 minutes. Deep breathing, just kind of uh, inhale and exhale for 3 minutes. But this sort of breathing reduces the carbon dioxide and the person can develop generalized seizure-like activity. Of course, the purpose of this is to actually bring out the seizure activity for diagnosis. But normally we should not hyperventilate. Next. This is the slow wave activity you can see with hyperventilation. So that is not a normal EEG at all. That means the person is getting drowsy or confused. Next. This hyperventilation can occur during overexertion, exhaustion, body tingling. Hyperventilation, we bring in the CO2 and we give out CO2. We bring in O2 and give out CO2. Spasms, confusion, anxiety, breathe into paper bag, and hopefully somebody can reassure you to reduce your anxiety and go into a relaxed yogic breathing, which gets some peace and calmness of the mind. So yogic breathing and pranayama is extremely important. Next. We also use what is called photic stimulation. Photic stimulation means you stimulate with flashing of lights at a certain frequency, and the brain literally follows that frequency uh, accurately. So this again is a technique to induce seizure-like activity. But you can see how there is a frequency following response in the brain in all different modalities. Next. Same thing, tonotopic organization in the cochlear spiral. Tonotopic means frequency dependent, frequency specific organization. And This is the round window with very high frequency here, 20 hertz audition, and then the sound activity dissipates and goes all the way to the apex up to 200 hertz. So the whole cochlea is like the piano scale from very high frequency to low frequency or low frequency to high frequency. And it's organized not only in the cochlea, but next slide, the same tonotopic organization also seen in the superior olivary complex, inferior collicular nucleus, medial geniculate body, and the auditory cortex. Next. And we can differentiate between the left and the right ear by the small difference in the latency. We can also differentiate in the intensity. And when there is a sound, our head and eyes turn to the source of the sound. Next. Here is the cortex, primary auditory cortex, and you can see that the frequency, auditory frequency, is mapped out on the primary auditory cortex from 500 hertz to 16,000 hertz. Our speech and auditory range is between 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Next. Now, our sleep-wake cycle is also very interestingly depends on the complex activity, what I call the piezoelectrochemical. Piezoelectrochemical means sound, electrical activity, and chemical activity. All these different types of energies come together and create our current state of the brain and mind and self. Now, there is a typical model of sleep-wake cycle, what is called two-process model. Process H is the homeostatic drive and process C is the circadian drive. Our alertness level depends on the combination of these two processes. The process H is a sleep load. As we go to the evening, we become more and more drowsy by about 10 or 11 o'clock. But our alerting signal then becomes less and less. So these two processes work together to produce alertness during the day and sleep at night. Ideally, one should be in delta wave sleep at night, deep sleep at night, and full alertness during the day, full presence. I'll come to the concept of presence later on. Next. This sleep-wake cycle depends on two major chemicals. One is called the melatonin and cortisol. Melatonin is related to sleep and cortisol is related to wakefulness. So cortisol comes in the morning and during the day. Melatonin rises towards the evening and at night. Next. You can see this is a PET scan. See a difference between this scan where there's less metabolic activity compared to this scan. In this scan, the person is in non-REM sleep. That means non-rapid eye movement sleep or dreamless sleep or deep sleep. And in this, the person is dreaming, rapid eye movement sleep, and the brain is very active because you are dreaming about all kinds of things. So it's a whole dream world. Next. The sleep-wake cycle goes through phases, about 90-minute cycle. As we fall asleep, it goes through REM sleep, then stage 1 and 2 sleep, and then deep sleep. And then there are periods when we come up to dream sleep. There are about 5 or 6 dream states during an 8 hour period of sleep. And this becomes during the early part of the night, there is more slow wave activity, and during the later part of the night, we have more dreams, REM sleep. And during these phases, both of these phases are important because we need to consolidate memories, relieve our conflicts and tensions, and rejuvenate or refresh our body and the brain. Next. Now I'll talk briefly about the mirror neuron system, which is extremely important for us to learn. You can see this little girl learning from her mother about the dance, and she's copying the steps exactly as her mother, looking and doing. So, and this depends upon a very complex circuit in the brain. For instance, uh, you see and hear in the inferior parietal lobule, and then superior temporal sulcus, and then the inferior frontal gyrus, where the Broca's area is, the speech processing, and then the sensory motor cortex. So this cyclical activity in the brain is responsible for this mirror neuron system. And the mirror neuron system is absolutely essential, not only for learning dance, movements, but also speech and language depends on that. So it's a complex process, but thank goodness we can all learn from our parents and our older brother or sister and friends. This is the mirror neuron system. And this mirror neuron system not only active when you do something, but it is also active when you just look at somebody doing things. As in this girl, she's just looking at the mother and then she's copying that action. Next. This mirror neuron system again has these are the main areas that we see: inferior frontal gyrus, precentral gyrus, and the inferior parietal lobe. And this is the brain scan that shows the activity during doing the movement and just watching the movement. Next. Sorry, one slide before.
Sorry, I think
Yeah, that. Now, in this, you can see this is Broca's area and the premotor cortex. This is the parietal area where we have a self-image, self-body image. And this is the area where we develop the image of the others. Whatever we are interacting with, whether it is a person or an object, we develop an image of that and we interact with it. So all this socialization and interaction depends on this network between the frontal, parietal, and the temporal areas. Self and the other. Next. Now, these mirror neurons are extremely important to understand what is called the theory of mind. Theory of mind means we look at the other person, we observe his behavior and activity, and his face, his emotions, gestures, and from that we guess what kind of state of mind he is in. Is he angry? Is he peaceful? Is he intend to do something harm, or is going to be friendly? All this is judged by the mirror neuron system and the theory of mind. We can also speculate how much the other person knows by the context of what happened before. So this theory of mind is extremely important and is the area of the parietal lobe that is involved in it. Next. There are multiple networks. Nowadays, we don't talk about localizing a particular function to a specific area of the brain, though there are broad localization. Like Broca's area is for speech, or Wernicke's area is for understanding speech. So or primary auditory area. But we think more in terms of networks, like the frontoparietal network, this frontal cortex and parietal cortex and the motor cortex. This is involved in the attentional network. Then there is frontal and cerebellar cortex network, and then the speech network, auditory cortex and frontal cortex. Next. Then we move on to what is called the central control of autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is very interesting and absolutely the ground of our being. A good, well-functioning autonomic nervous system is extremely important. That's the physiology of the whole body, mind, and self. On the top is the cerebral cortex with voluntary or intentional activity, which is conscious. Then below that is the limbic lobe, emotional unit. And below that is the hypothalamus, overall integration of the autonomic nervous system. Then the reticular formation, the brainstem, regulation of pupil size, respiration, heart, blood pressure, swallowing, etc. And then the spinal cord, required for urination, defecation, erection, ejection, all these reflexes are through the spinal cord. And the whole thing is absolutely interconnected, and one influences the other from top down or bottom up. Next. These are the different components of the central autonomic nervous system. The cingulate gyrus, hypothalamus, and different nuclei, locus coeruleus, vagal nuclei, insula. But you don't need to know the name. The idea is there is a central processing unit that coordinates the autonomic nervous system from moment to moment. With every heartbeat, with every breath, it is coordinating continuously. Next. Hypothalamus is supposed to be the head ganglion of autonomic nervous system, and it has both sympathetic as well as parasympathetic division. The sympathetic division goes all the way down from T1 to L2, and the parasympathetic division has both the cranial part and the pelvic part. The cranial part is through nerves 3, 7, 9, and 10. Vagus nerve is extremely important, and I'll come more to that next. Locus coeruleus, this particular nucleus is called locus coeruleus, is in the upper part of the pons, and that's an extremely crucial nucleus because it secretes norepinephrine and it causes alertness, attentiveness, also causes vasoconstriction, especially of the nasal mucosa. So our nasal cycle, breathing cycle, depends on constriction by the locus coeruleus, one on each side. So the so-called Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna nadis depend on the locus coeruleus. Which side is dominant and which side is, whether the both are working or one side is dominant, the other side is passive. So I'll come to that more into that. But just remember that locus coeruleus is a very crucial nucleus in the brainstem that provides norepinephrine to the whole nervous system and which is responsible for vasoconstriction in the nasal mucosa. Next. Locus coeruleus is also important for stretch receptors. When you take a deep breath, inhalation, as you do like a deep inhalation, the stretch receptors in the lungs are stimulated and then it limits the expansion of the lung. But it stimulates locus coeruleus and then it stimulates the cortex and also it limits the expansion of the lung. Locus coeruleus also responds to baroreceptors or the pressure receptors in the aortic arch and the cardiac rhythm. So the whole thing is extremely well coordinated, and we should be thankful that it works such a complex system. It's almost like a microcosm or the universe in the whole body. Next. Next slide. Yes. Here, this shows the respiratory center, which is very sensitive to low oxygen, high CO2, and high H-ion concentration or low pH. And these are central chemoreceptors, receptors in the muscles and joint, and then the stretch receptors in the lungs and irritant in the lungs. And this, of course, is continuously active throughout our life. Some people in animals, they have actually removed this respiratory center and it keeps pulsating even in a petri dish. It's amazing how powerful these neurons are. As long as the pH and the saline surrounding it is maintained, it can keep on uh, breathing in a way. Next. Then let me move to what is called the oculomotor control, how we control the eyes. And the control of the eyes depends on these major areas: supplementary eye field, frontal eye field, parietal eye field, and these in turn are connected to superior colliculus and then the reticular formation, pontine reticular formation, and the mesencephalic reticular formation. So the simple eye movements are controlled by such a complex network. And this is in yoga also, we emphasize stillness of the eye movements or bhrumadhya drushti or nasikagdar drushti. We try to focus our eyes at a single point and minimize the random movements of the eyes. So, but during meditation, there is a balance between right and left hemisphere, and all these eye fields, they are in communication, in harmony, and therefore the both eyes are resting. When the eyes rest, the mind also rests. Wandering eyes go with wandering mind. So these two are very closely related. Next. There is a well-known theory called the polyvagal theory described by Stephen Porges. He studied the vagal nuclei, two vagal nuclei, the dorsal vagal nucleus and the ventral vagal nucleus and the sympathetic nervous system. And he suggested that there are three modes of our being, especially emotional and physiological being. The oldest one is about 500 million years old. The sympathetic is about 400 million years ago, and the newest one is 200 million years ago. And during in the dorsal vagal nucleus activation, one is in a low energy state and one has almost kind of given up effort. It's almost like praying dead, like an opossum. In the sympathetic mode, it's a fight and flight response. You either fight with the enemy or the danger or you run away from it. And in the ventral vagal state, you are safe in yourself, you are at home in the situation, and you want to make peace and be friends with what you are facing. Next. This concept is shown briefly in this stair, what is called the autonomic ladder. The lowest one is the dorsal vagal nucleus. I can't cope. I collapsed and shut down. It's like depression, giving up, sadness, feeling dejected. In the sympathetic mode, you realize that I'm in danger and I need to either run or fight the book or fight back on whatever the danger is. And in the ventral vagal mode, I feel connected to the greater world. The same kind of autonomic ladder also applies to Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Ida is the left nasal flow, Pingala is the right nasal flow, and Sushumna is bilateral nasal flow. Now, Ida is low energy state, Pingala is the moderate state, and Sushumna is the optimum state where you feel great in yourself. You can feel at ease with yourself and at home in the world, and you socialize with people. You deal with the world. You appreciate nature and the wonder of it. Next. So you can go into either like an upward spiral or downward spiral. From the state of boredom, if you go downward, you go into pessimism, frustration, irritation, impatience, worry, doubt, anger, rage, jealousy, hatred, insecurity, guilt, and powerlessness. While if you go in the upward spiral, you have positivity, contentment, belief, hopefulness, optimism, happiness, enthusiasm, passion, eagerness, empowerment, love, joy, and freedom. So, of course, better to stay positive and be on the upward spiral than going downhill in the downward spiral. Next. Now, the concept of energy is very interesting. The psychic or mental energy, initially, Freud tried to deal with it. Freud was a neurologist and he tried to get into this psychic energy, but somehow that time neurophysiology and neuroanatomy wasn't that well known, and the arousal systems were not known. So he gave up the idea of psychic energy. But Jung picked it up, and he accepted the psychic energy. In fact, he gave talks on Kundalini, 6 talks on Kundalini, and of course, in the yoga and Vedanta, Shiva Shakti is well known. Shiva is the consciousness principle or awareness, and Shakti is the energy of the whole cosmos, whole phenomenal world, including our body, mind, and ego. Now, where do you mental energy goes? One is in managing pain and stress, directing attention, making decisions, resisting temptation, controlling emotional displays, forming new habits, and completing everyday chores and learning new things. All these require psychic or mental energy. Next. Now, Jung also created this very meaningful model of the ego and self. He differentiated between ego and self. Others, there's a lot of confusion between ego and self. His model again shows the outer world, the inner world. Persona is the superficial face, facade. This is the ego, this is self or the authentic self. Then shadow is the unconscious or the subconscious mind with conflicts and anima and animus. There is both the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. Next. In yoga, we have this concept of Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Ida is the nadi on the left side of the body, which activates the right hemisphere of the brain. And Pingala is the right side of the body, which activates the left side of the brain. And Sushumna is the middle or the central channel, which causes alertness, attentiveness, and awareness or presence. That's where there is a balance between sympathetic and the vagal dominance. And this nasal cycle occurs in all of us. It is part of the circadian cycle. And it shows the state of Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. I've published articles on that. And you can monitor your own state of being, state of energy, depending upon what sort of nasal flow. I had published an article where you can create a 5 stage, 5 steps of alertness. The lowest is when you are just breathing through the mouth. The next higher energy is Ida or the left nasal flow. The next level is Pingala or the right nasal flow. And Sushumna is both. And if you run or jog when you exercise, then you have not only the bilateral nasal flow, but you also breathe through the mouth. So you have but that is more like a hyperventilation. But the calm, alertness, and awareness occurs in Sushumna. And next, I'll show you what the EEG shows in different states. The EEG changes in pranayama. This is very important. We do Anulom Vilom, Ujjayi Pranayam, Shitali and Shitkari, and Brahmari. One can think of pranayam as the calming activity and activating or stimulating or exciting activity. These first four are like the calming pranayama. And in this group of pranayams, there is increase in alpha and theta frequencies, and there is a decrease in beta and gamma activity. So there is a parasympathetic dominance, calmness, quietness, stillness, serenity. In Kapalbhati and Brastika, there is activation, so increase in beta and gamma frequencies and decrease in alpha and theta activity, so there is sympathetic dominance. Then we do mantra meditation, Om, Soham, and Hamsaha mantra. And this is interesting that the Om mantra is correlated with 432 hertz, which is related to Earth's frequency, geomagnetic frequency, or Schumann resonance. And 528 hertz is related to the solar energy. Now, Om again, there are different ways of saying it, Om or Soham and Hum. And I find it interesting that the mantra is like a tool, as a tool to use or to shift the state of the brain and mind in a positive way. So O is during deep inhalation. If you say O or so, and then long exhalation, you say ma or hum. I find it useful that soham, deep inhalation during the day, is very helpful because it keeps you alert, attentive, and during the night you want longer exhalation like Hamsa mantra, Hamsaha, which is makes you calm and quiet and easy to sleep. So we need to achieve calm alertness, a sort of sympathovagal balance and conscious optimization both during the day and at night. And when you are calm and alert, then you may hear what is called the Anahatanada, which is really the Anahata Shanti. It is the spontaneous peace that you can experience during this Anahatanada. And inhale sort of refreshes you and exhale relaxes you. Next. So there is what I call samatvam. Samatva has been emphasized even in Bhagavad Gita. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Samatvam or evenness of mind leads to ekatvam or oneness. This homeodynamic equilibrium of the life, body, mind, and being in the wholeness of nature. Nature empowers us and guides our daily activities and being. We should align ourselves and work in harmony with nature. Live life one breath at a time. Learn the great art of presence. That is the main message, art of presence. And this samatvam and ekatvam, which has been emphasized in yogic tradition. Next. I think that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Lot of detailed information. It's a wonderful presentation. And again, any questions? Please feel free to ask questions. So I have one question. Gamma frequency. Is there a higher limit for it?
Gamma frequency is considered like 30 to 100 hertz. A lot of research has been done to 40 hertz, what is called the binding problem. How do we correlate the left brain and the right brain, or the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe? That connection depends on gamma frequency. That conscious integration, when we make a conscious decision, when we solve a problem, when we come up with an answer, then gamma frequency is essential. And my mind, gamma frequency is essential also to connect with others, to connect with the world. So ideally, during the day, one should be in the alpha and gamma frequency, which is a great combination. So you are alert but relaxed, sort of calm presence.
Thank you.
Dr. Deshmukh, I have
Dr.
one question.
Deshmukh,
Go ahead.
thank you. Dr. Deshmukh, I thank you so much for your presentation. I'm a parent of a non-speaking autistic child, and when you mentioned about the importance of pranayama and the theory of polyvagal theory of Dr. Stephen Porges, I have read his books and been familiar with safe and sound protocol and stuff like that. And pranayama really resonated with me. But my question is, when the person is not in a condition where they can self administer those pranayama, or even if it is done, it's going to be a burst of maybe only a few seconds instead of having it for a prolonged controlled breathing by the individual. How are the effects, or would there be an effect at all? Could
Yes,
that bring improvement?
there will be effect because I'm fully convinced that each breath affects the brain in positive or negative way, depending upon how you breathe. In fact, people have shown with the patients with epilepsy, they had electrodes in the brain directly recording, and there is a direct link between breathing and what happens in the brain with each breath, with each inhalation and exhalation. And this is not just the mechanical conduction, but actually networks are connected. So we have a respiration related potentials in different areas of the brain. So I'm fully convinced if you take a deep breath and a long exhalation, it affects your brain with each and every breath. So, of course, depends. If you do 10 breaths, it's going to have more effect. If you do one breath, it's going to have minimal effect. If you spend 10 minutes, then it will have longer effect. Because you are changing the very electrochemistry of the brain, and therefore your mood and your level of energy and alertness.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Dr. Deshmukh, one quick question. This is Milind Sabde. Can you talk more about heart and brain resonance?
Yeah, I'm very fond of nature and I feel completely at home in nature. I go for a walk twice a day, morning and evening, and I just thoroughly enjoy it. I have no agenda or anything. I just look at plants and flowers and birds and fish and just enjoy being there. Almost I forget myself. And I take photos every now and then. And that is a great mergence of my ego in nature itself. And I feel completely I am at ease and at home in nature. And there is so much beauty and wonder in nature. Same thing with art. Any kind of music. Music affects your brain directly. Because music, of course, is complex frequencies. And our audio system is directly connected to the brain, as I showed you. Same thing with visual art, painting, any form of art that gives you joy and pleasure has a very positive effect on the brain. So we should stay curious, creative, and happy from moment to moment, breath by breath.
But now, purely from scientific point of view, when you are looking at electromagnetic signal, heart gives out stronger electromagnetic signal, and I heard basically it's somewhere close to about 6 times compared to what brain gives out. So, in terms of achieving the resonance between these two, any thoughts?
People have shown some studies in which the Schumann resonance and the geomagnetic field affects the brain, the EEG activity. There is a process called grounding where you stand barefoot in the grass or wet surface, and people have done EEG in that, and that showed changes uh, whether you are grounded or not, because our body is an electromagnetic instrument, bioelectric instrument. And same thing with breathing and the atmospheric energy, atmospheric electricity. We are connected with that. And of course, the light is very powerful stimulus. Photic stimulation is very powerful. Photosynthesis happens all the time. So all these natural energies are influencing us every moment. So yeah, ultimately, the whole electromagnetic spectrum, we are in the ocean of that. But I selected bioelectric because that is more directly related to our human experience.
Another quick question.
Navita, you have a question? Okay.
I do. thank you, Dr. Deshmukh, for this very, very, very deep information about the electromagnetic fields. But my question was, every book that I have picked up and read is talking about how we need to connect to our subconscious mind in being able to bring things to bear. We our conscious mind only understands certain kind of language, and then the subconscious mind understands different kind of language. So is there um, a way that you would recommend, or have you seen where these kind of the research that you've been doing or working on can help us create this connection between our subconscious mind so that we can bring the things that we believe are going to happen. Actually, how they say you can create your own future by accessing your subconscious mind. So just wanted to see how we could connect to our subconscious mind through these processes.
Of course, subconscious mind is difficult to directly observe and experiment with, but is mostly the subcortical activity and the autonomic activity. And one of my slides I showed that when you meditate and go into quieter states, calmer states, like in alpha and theta activity, then, and you start, your mind has stopped talking. All this walkie-talkie that goes on in your mind, when that chattering mind calms down and your mind is relatively quiet, silent, and still, then there is a direct connection with some of the subconscious desires, thoughts, and feelings that come up to the surface. Of course, this happens during dreams, of course. Very purpose of dream is what has been, whatever conflicts have been in your mind during the day have not been resolved, have not been solved. And therefore, you kind of work at it during the dream. But if your mind is really peaceful and calm, the dreams become less and less. Also, during the day, your thinking becomes less and less. You realize that you stop talking too much to yourself. You stop talking to others unless you are asked a question. You don't keep on talking. So there's unnecessary talking that goes on. The monkey mind becomes quiet by itself. And then you take part more in observing the wonders of nature, the beauty of others. You become more a listener than a talker. You listen to others, you connect to others, you really care for others. So I think that's very important. Otherwise, we are so preoccupied with our own life story, with our own thoughts and emotions, that we don't hardly look at somebody from our own heart completely, peacefully, with full presence. We are so busy in trying to respond to the next question. But that calm presence, the loving presence, is very important. And that develops as the conflicts in the unconscious mind resolve, gradually come up to the surface and resolve, and you become relatively free of it. There is integration between conscious and subconscious mind. There is no conflict.
Let me, Dr. Deshmukh, let me ask a layman's question. Hello.
This is Ramesh
Can you hear me?
Deshpande.
Yeah. Let me raise only a layman's question. I'm not a scientist. What are we talking about here? Are we talking about influence of brain over body, mind, and intellect? Or we can influence the brain through the processes of body, mind, and intellect? So what yoga tells us is to start with dealing with body, and, dealing with mind, and dealing with intellect, and then the brain will respond to that. So I'm a little perplexed with this presentation. Am I looking at the science of brain, or I am looking at a process by which I can influence the brain, my thinking, as to body, as to mind, as to intellect, and the integration of the two, and then the total awareness. So how would you explain to a layman? I'm not worried how my brain does and which part does what. I'm not worried. I want to see with my bodily activities, mental activities, intellectual activities, how my brain will respond. So I'm talking about the reverse process. So how do we explain that? I will stop here.
Yeah, I think you don't need to know anything about the brain.
Exactly.
I agree with that. And people have been enlightened without knowing anything about the brain.
Yeah,
So I'm not claiming that you have to study neuroscience and neuroanatomy and neurophysiology and neurology. You don't need to. What is crucial is your self-awareness.
absolutely.
Awareness of the body, mind, and ego, and
Yeah,
also awareness of the world
yeah,
and learning from it and integrating all that experience within yourself without any conflict, without any duality ultimately. The
and for
non-dual
that,
awareness.
the breath is most important. That is focusing on the
Yeah,
breath.
breath is extremely important because breath has direct relationship with the brain. And
Exactly.
breath is something that you can control voluntarily to some extent. Not completely, but to some extent.
Well, thank you very much for a great presentation. I don't want to
Oh, thank
minimize
you. Thank you.
the importance of the knowledge, but I was just thinking, why do I want to know all this? You see,
You don't
I'm
need
just
to anything. Just meditate. Just be aware.
thank
You
you,
are
thank you.
already enlightened.
No, 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 no. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice question, Ramesh.
Okay. If nobody's asking, I will ask one more question, Doctor. As everybody is pointing out, this is a fascinating presentation. There is so much of complexity and understanding. Only comment I have, if you really understand, if you study, you tend to retain better. You understand why we do what we do. So that being the case, one question I have is in terms of relationship between the manifestation and gamma waves. Can you talk about that?
Okay, that is where the resonance comes in. If you heard, like Sheldrake talks about morphic resonance, and the resonance is between the gamma activity in the individual person and the natural frequencies outside, like the 432 hertz or 528 hertz, Anahata Nada, Anahata Shanti, sort of synchronizing with nature as it is, um, and having a completely peaceful mind in that, which is like a morphic resonance. He calls it morphic resonance. Is the resonance between the living organism and its environment, the nature. And of course, people have shown that if you walk in nature, you have a far better mindset than you walk in downtown looking at all the advertisements and all. So it has a direct relationship with brain, mind, and self or being. And gamma activity is crucial. It has been observed and shown. And one of the way to reach gamma activity without having EEG is to realize that you are breathing through both nostrils, but you're not running around. You are calm and alert and attentive and present. If you can do that, then that's it. You are connected with everything that is. If you hear Anatha, you are Anatha Shanti, you are spontaneously peaceful, at home, at ease, and present minded, and love, full of love for the whole life and existence. I mean, that is it. You don't need to measure gamma activity. You are in tune with nature. That is the divine being, divine nature, divine communication, communion.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda, you have any questions?
Forgive me, I'm just jumping in, so I always have questions, but I'll observe. Thank you so much. It's great to see you all.
So anyway, the session is recorded, and so you can listen to the YouTube recordings. Anybody else? Otherwise, we can. I will process the YouTube recording soon, and we'll post it on different WhatsApp groups and also by email. Thank you very much, Dr. Deshmukh. It was nice to see you on Zoom. It has been a long
Thank
time.
you so much for
I see you
inviting
met you
me.
in person. Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for organizing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you and good night.